homies, come join me. I have not grinded like I grinded today in a long while. Don't get me wrong. Everything feels really good. This was definitely one of those days throughout the week where we're getting toward the end of the peak week and CNS is seeing fucking fried. You know, it is. We are toasted today. But that does not mean the consistency was not there. You know, the whole point of this kind of training is to be able to build myself up to no matter how I'm feeling or no matter how tired I get, I can still hit the standards that I'm trying to set for myself, you know? I really wanted to challenge myself a little bit with the snatches today. And I typically really don't like doing hang movements because I've had issues with them in the past. You guys know I have my bone growth on my left hand, so anytime the technique isn't where it needs to be, it hits my nerve pretty hard on my left. But that does not mean I can't do it, right? It's just every time I hit that nerve, it's just a sign to me that I have what it takes to do it. I'm just not doing the form as efficiently or correctly as I should be doing according to what my body needs, right? Because if I can snatch without pain, that I can hang snatch without pain. So, and especially because I don't use straps and I only do a hook grip with thumb tape, it can be a little harder because I have baby hands. I have the smallest of hands and it sucks because my grip is really tough on my thumbs sometimes. But either way, goes good. You know, I got the first couple ones, I was trying to figure it out. It's kind of just one of those things where you got to take it one step at a time. You know, you really just got to feel it through, you know, see what you can fix in that moment. And like the whole time, like I think like at 135, or even 95, I think I jumped forward and I was like, okay, let's get a more vertical upward pull. You know, let's finish that third extension. And I did that, but then I'd still walk forward on the catch. And I'm like, okay, what's wrong with the catch? You know, and then I see that my hips aren't dropping fast enough. I'm catching the weight at 90 degrees and then squatting into it instead of squatting directly into ass to grass position, you know? So getting a little bit quicker, being, you know, not as tense initially on the catch, you know, like letting my hips have that mobility, that little bit of wiggle room to dive underneath and hit the depth that I need it to. 205 absolutely demolished. And so had to put on 2 plates. And if it were a different day, I would have gone heavier because 225 was easily the best one of the day, was damn near perfect technique. And the biggest thing was I wanted to really test my speed under the bar, you know, my good lockout. And that's why, like, this wasn't the highest hang that you can do. No, a lot of people do hip hang snatches where they just go straight into it from the hips. I'm not built that way. You know, I don't know what it is or what I need to do to get that way, but I have never been interested in it. And I've always, you know, suffered and lost progress because of that. And that's mostly my own doing, you know, not being able to do the technique correctly, but also it's just not something I'm really interested in, right? So I didn't go all the way to the knee, but I did go down enough to where I could use that little bit of whip to get it back in place. And I really like going a little bit lower on the hangs than as high a hang as you can typically go, because I think it really tests your core stability, you know? Because whipping straight underneath, it doesn't test my core as much. It's really just, that's all speed and all lockout without much actual transition from the initial part of the snatch technique, you know, the pull. And I like making sure I have at least a little bit of that in there. But super happy with that. You know, I was telling my homies today, like, that's one of the best ways I can prime my CNS, because I've trained squats first and bench first before in my programs. And obviously, if you do a super hard static strength lift like squats or bench, it's going to make it harder to do anything after, regardless of what it is. But the biggest thing was that people always think that whenever I do Olympic lifting first, it shocks my CNS too much or works my body too hard because it's always full body, and then getting into squats right after is too tough. I see it the opposite way. I believe it's actually very productive toward my squats and my bench because it's a full body movement and based primarily off of my technique and my core stability and explosiveness and lockout. It actually primes my CNS and my main muscle groups for squats because I don't use enough strength in my main muscle groups to be burnt out because I have to do technique first. And so the main muscle groups never get burnt out from Olympic lifting unless I hit a true, no, not even at my max out. It's like, it's too technical of a lift for my main muscle groups, my legs, my arms, my back, to be burnt out from a top set. So it primes my joints, it primes my CNS. My main muscle groups have just enough tension in them to jump right into squats without needing to do anything else or any other warm-ups or, types of accessories. And I'm not going to lie to you, the squats did feel pretty horrible at the beginning. That wasn't because of the snatches. I actually think the snatches gave me the best chance possible of doing well today. It's just one of those days where, like, the little things can really knock you back, And not in the sense of, like, I have things going on in my life, nothing like that. Sometimes the most insignificant of stressors can be the most significant. Little things like my phone running out of storage and I have to deal with that in the middle of trying to lock in my weights. I was trying to do a more narrow foot stance before getting into the heavier sets, and turns out my squat was good where it was. So I had to kind of rebalance my squat halfway through my warm-ups, which never feels good. And it's that constant back and forth fighting with the technique, kind of like the other day when I did my muscle snatches, that really can tick you back, and like, especially like right now I'm in my work schedule at the hospital, and so every night I'm going back for 12-hour shifts. So I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm tired. It really makes me think of like how different these programs would look if I wasn't working again. I'd be built fucking different. But I love my job and I love what it's given me and I love the opportunity of it. So, and it's also a passion in my life. So I want to at least give it that effort. You got to sacrifice some strength to be able to do some other passions in your life. I don't want it to just be weightlifting, as much as I love it and as much as I'm always going to be doing it. But I got to around 365, 385 and it started feeling better. But I could tell that I was burning myself out from overthinking all the little shit. The work schedule getting to me, worried about meetings, worried about homework, worried about the videos not recording, not having the best warm-up I could have had when I felt good getting into it. Just the little stuff where, like, it doesn't go according just to plan like you thought it would, but you got to let that roll off the shoulder. You got to let that grain of salt fly away. It's not worth letting it tank your absolute potential throughout that day's lift when you know that you can do it, and it's more of a mindset than it is all the little insignificant stressors. Because this is the biggest thing. It's when you have all these little things building up, the insignificant stressors that you typically go through every day. Everybody's got a certain extent of things that they'll run into that are quote-unquote negative stimuli that appear more neutral because we go through them every day. Like little shit like with work, like with my video stuff, like stuff that doesn't super matter and it shouldn't get the best of you, but is still a negative stressor nonetheless. And so when you ignore these things and you let them build up over time, eventually that glass that is filling up in your head of these insignificant stressors is going to break. The water's going to overfill and you're going to blow up about it, And one of the worst things you can do, no matter what you're doing in the day, whether it's weightlifting, your job, being with other people, just anything you're doing in the day, whatever you're doing is going to get so, I don't want to say ruined, but it's just that kind of outburst can tank a day so easily. No matter what you're doing or no matter how confident you were going into it, if you let that outburst come out and you let your glass overfill without acknowledging it or dealing with it properly, rather than just ignoring it and thinking that it's just typical daily life, whatever, it's going to it's going to make a good day suffer. What could have been so much better. And if you got to learn, you got to learn. Even if you have a negative day and you have an outburst, take that and try to do better next time. But today was great because I was getting to that point. I was getting in my head a little bit. And the moment I got to those heaviest sets, I was like, stop overthinking everything. Stop making everything overplay in my head. Don't let the insignificant stressors that I know I can handle on my own take out what could be one of the best days of the week if I choose to put my mindset in that way, because it's a choice to think positively, just as much as it's a choice to think negatively. And so right then and there, I think it was around 365, 385 on squat, threw out that mindset. I was like, narrow foot stance, be gone. I'm just locking in. My squat hasn't been hurting at all lately, so there's no real point in me changing it. Just the front squat felt so much better that I felt like trying it. Cool. We lived and we learned. Back to what we've been doing. when you're at those heavy weights, your best techniques is going to come out as long as you can commit to it. So I just turned my brain off and I just squatted and it moved, you know? I relied on my core as hard as I could. I took my time getting into the ass to grass position. I exploded as hard as I could, you know? Doing the best that I could in that moment, you know, despite the setbacks or the almost, you know, insignificant outbursts on the way up. Took my time. I acknowledged that shit. Talked to a homie. I always say it. Let that shit out. And you will progress. Every time. And I am so happy to say that I got 445 again today. I was really concerned. Not concerned. This is what I mean. I don't want this to be a program like how I used to be, where I'd be stressed about hitting a certain number every day. I want to earn it and feel like it's okay to either not hit it or hit it because I put in my best one way or another. And so if I had gone up to 445 feeling like I did on the warm-ups, I would not have earned that. You know, I would not have even attempted it because it wouldn't have been something that, per this new program, per what I want out of it, just based off the principles alone, it would not have been right to attempt because of that setback mentally. But because I got my shit together and I took in and accepted the bullshit that was in my head and moved on from it and just chose to have fun and chose to do my best, it lifted, you know? And let me tell you, it was a grind. It was a grind. I have not grinded through a squat like that in a long time. Back tried to round, but you know, when I'm committed halfway through and I can feel the barbell still going up, I have to push through. I would drop it if it started ticking at me immediately, but it's because I got through the sticking point and got right there immediately that I knew I had a little bit left in me to push through, and it went. I love a rep like that because that shows me how much I got in me, how much I can bounce back. Because even though I was letting the little shit get to me and I was letting all this stupid stuff take over what could have just been an easy squat day, I still made the most out of it. I still learned in that moment, kind of like with my snatch technique. You got to take it every weight at a time. You got to take it each set at a time, and you get to the point where you can, even mentally, you can sit there and say, okay, well, I know exactly what I need to do right now to reroute my mindset or reroute my lifts, so let's do it. You know, let's stop complaining. Let's talk to a homie. Let's think about what I'm doing. Sometimes it's best to just stop thinking too much, you know? Just take your time. Breathe for a minute. Accept that the next weight could be your max for that day and make that your best weight. And if it goes, make the next weight your best weight. And if that goes, and so forth, right? One homie that's been so inspiring to me lately, I met him recently. I mentioned him the other day. He has one amputated leg and one hand that has 2 or 3 fingers, you know, from whatever accident or whatever he's been through in his life. I didn't ask, but he's killing it. He hits squat for depth. He deadlifts with both hands over the bar with clean deadlift form. Sheesh, man. And he came up to me today, and he thanked me for my advice on his deadlift technique. Not because I made him better or anything. It's not like that. But it's the fact that my tidbits of perspective was enough to get him in his own good mindset, to get himself out of his own rut, you know? That's what's so important. It's being able to depend on each other just enough to bounce yourself back and then be like, damn, I did have that in me. You just got to commit to it in that moment. You know, stop worrying about the little shit. He was telling me about how his form was like taking him a little bit, like different parts of his body was feeling a little sore. And I was like, that's normal, man. You're changing stuff up. You got to let it get used to it. And to an extent, it might just be an off day. If your form is good, like it has been, because it is good, then just accept each rep as its own and see how heavy you can go if that's what you want to do. And the man almost PR'd. He like threw his old weight like it was nothing. And last week he couldn't do 2 plates for any. You know, it's awesome to see. And so just remind yourself that sometimes it's just a matter of just relax. You can do it. Especially right now, if you're having a super awful stressful day, you can still do it. It's a fucking choice to lock that in and accept the day for what it's got for you, you know? Oh, physically, it wasn't super great on squat. Snatches felt really good. I really can't complain. Like, this is the most, like, flat 9 kind of day I can give you. Because I outdid the expectations in both lifts, which I definitely didn't expect at all. But that doesn't mean I physically felt that apt to do so. You know, it was a really, really tough one, really hard grind. But we made it. And we did the best we fucking could. So I got to take that. Mentally, I gave it a 9.3 for sure. Good ass day. I'm finally like earning each weight as I go. You know, I'm really, really enjoying this program. And knock on wood, I'm not going to jinx it, but tomorrow's the last day of the peak week. And it has been at least a year since I've hit a full strength training peak week with no pain. So I'm so excited to get my shit together again. And then I'll be able to rebuild the program back up from the ground up with this new baseline. And it'll just be so much better later on. You know, it makes me so happy that I can just like, not only with my lifts, but also with my mentality, I can see what I'm doing inefficiently or see what I'm doing to cause myself to perform negatively and just say, hey, take a step back, man. Relax a minute. Don't let it get to you. You got this shit. You know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. I don't know. Just the ability to hype yourself up in the moment, despite those seemingly insignificant stressors that will take over, you know? One way or another, I'll be back tomorrow. We have an accessory clean and jerk day with heavy bench press. I'm going to try to go for 345 again, see how that goes. And if it goes, we're moving on to the next cycle. I'm fucking excited. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for letting me yap it. You know, I love getting the shit out while I can. But let me know how your life's listening on. I love hearing about it. And I will be back tomorrow. I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.